Testing, 1, 2, test, test. September 24th, I will call the North Kingstown School Committee business meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is to recess into executive session pursuant to RIGL 42464 for discussion of any discussion of job performance, character, or physical or mental health of a person or persons, provided that such person or persons affected shall have been notified in writing and advised that they may require the discussion to be held in open meeting pursuant to RIGL 42465A1. Addendum Assistant Athletic Director / Athletic Trainer Contract, Associate Athletic Director / Athletic Trainers, that's just the sporting jobs, excuse me. Session pertaining to potential litigation and legal advice for collective bargaining pursuant to RIGL 42465A2. John Joe 22 et al. Versus North Kingstown et al. PC 2024-02872. And then item 3, discussion regarding matters of security, included to but not limited to the deployment of security personnel or devices pursuant to RIGL 42465A3 District Alice Training. Can I get a motion to go into executive?
So moved.
Give me a second. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
So we will come back from executive session. I'll disclose there were no votes taken in executive session today. The next item on the video open. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is roll call.
Erin Earl. Here. Robert Case.
Here.
Jennifer Lima. Here. James Sheehan.
Here.
Deborah Lacosco. Here. Christine LaPierre. Joshua Bell. Bush. Here. Sorry.
Okay, and a special welcome to Joshua, our new student representative. So welcome to your first meeting. Okay, and then the calendar, please.
So our next two school committee agenda meetings are October 8th at 7 p.m. at Central Office, and then October 22nd, both Tuesdays, 7 p.m. We have some subcommittee meetings. A policy subcommittee meeting Monday, September 30th. That will be at 4:30 here at Central Office. A CLAC subcommittee on Monday, October 7th at 6:45 here at Central Office. A DEI subcommittee on Wednesday, October 9th at 5:30 at Central Office. Wellness subcommittee Wednesday, October 16th at 4:30 here at Central Office. And TAC subcommittee Monday, October 21st at 4:30 at Central Office.
Okay, thank you. Next item is citizens' comments. Do we have people signed up? Thank you. Okay, and as a reminder, pursuant to our policy BE, we are respectfully asking folks to limit their comments to 5 minutes, and you are no longer required to disclose your address while speaking. So, Pam?
Pam Panero, 710 Slocum Road. First, I want to thank the staff at Wickford Middle School and North Kingstown High School for ensuring a smooth start to the school year for my two kids. Your efforts don't go unnoticed, and I'm grateful for all that you do. I'm here tonight to address two key items on the agenda. First, the public comment policy. I appreciate the extension to 5 minutes. It gives more room for thoughtful communication. However, I'd like to request some further refinements. Over the past several months, meetings have consistently started 20 to 40 minutes later than the posted time. While this may have been a rare occurrence in the past, it has become more frequent, and frankly, it discourages participation. Many of us, particularly parents, cannot afford to commit our entire evening to a meeting that starts so late, especially those of us who work. I suggest adding a clause to the policy that ensures every effort is made to start no more than 10 minutes after the advertised time. Additionally, the growing length of meetings is concerning. While I understand the need for thorough discussion, I urge the committee to uphold the 10 p.m. cutoff as a rare exception rather than the norm. Long meetings should not become standard practice. On that note, if agendas were planned and distributed with enough lead time, it would allow school administration and other guests presenting to adequately prepare. This would also give them the opportunity to include responses to questions that could be submitted in advance, streamlining meetings and addressing concerns more efficiently. Next, I want to address the redistricting item. Redistricting is never easy, but given the capacity issue at some schools, it appears necessary. As someone who was redistricted as a student in this district and as a parent whose two children were redistricted in the most recent process, I want to remind everyone that behind every number and figure is a student, family, and possibly a sibling who will be affected. While the kids are resilient, these changes can have lasting impacts. Clear, timely communication with families should be a priority throughout this process. Lastly, I'd like to ask why there are no finance subcommittee meeting dates posted, and I'm also concerned that the building subcommittee meetings are set to begin at 3:30 p.m. This timing makes it difficult for working parents and those with school pickups to attend. Scheduling meetings that consider the availability of working parents is crucial for ensuring their voices are heard, especially on topics like redistricting and finances. The Finance Subcommittee, in particular, has been a long-needed space for transparency and fiscal oversight, especially in light of items that impact our school budget, and I strongly urge the committee to schedule this as soon and ensure it operates in a way that invites community participation. The decisions made here directly impact students, families, and our broader community. It's important that meetings are scheduled and run in a manner that allows working parents and community members to engage meaningfully in these discussions, and I hope you will consider these suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Mary.
I wish I could be showing you the video of my grandson taking his first steps today, but instead, I'll thank you all for your continued efforts to address and balance the wishes of our townspeople and the needs of our students to arrive at a plan to build a new middle school and to improve all of our schools. I still hear some of the same criticisms, and I'm hoping you will address these in a town forum. Will there be one prior to the election? I certainly hope so. One of the fears I hear is that when the bond passes, you will spend the budget in any way you wish. I urge you to continuously repeat what guardrails are in place to disallow that. RIDE has no interest in wasting state dollars and wants projects to succeed. Please explain how checks and rechecks in the process provide guardrails through the entire timeline. Other voices I encounter ask how much will be saved with the new net zero energy conscious building. Please stress life cycle cost and savings over an extended period of time. You've already spoken of the annual energy use per square foot, or EUI, of an older building compared to a net zero school. On paper and in real-life examples, it appears our energy use per unit area should be at least halved. Will our target EUI of 25 be written into our contracts? Can you or Perkins Eastman explain to the public the steps during the building process that are taken to repeatedly ensure we meet and hopefully improve upon that goal? Finally, another issue that continues to bubble up is why we can't keep our old school that parents and even grandparents attended. You've shown that the cost of renovating are very near or greater than the cost of a new up-to-date building. I think of the answer to this in terms of cars. I still hold dear memories of our childhood car, and then I remember the signs at the gas station immediately across from our home. I was learning my numbers and remember it jumping from 22 cents to 25 cents per gallon. I also remember the five of us kids standing up in the back seat, windows rolled all the way down on a late warm winter day, and then seeing my brother fly out the window as my mom took a turn, and watching him skid over a snowbank. Or the time that my 10-year-old brother announced a family vacation, piled us kids into the car, and got it into neutral. We delighted in coasting down the hill till we ran into a tree. I truly loved our beautiful old car, but I would never want to see my grandchildren traveling in it today. And education also transports kids to new places. Please let it be through our new middle school and improvements to all of our schools. I look forward to a town forum and a passing bond. Thank you.
Can you send me your questions, and that way we can provide responses?
Okay.
I got it. Thank you.
Should I just email that?
Yeah, if you can email them to me, because
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Barb, can you pass that down? Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Duba?
The first bullet is regards to district highlights. So we just say that at the beginning of the school year opened up smoothly. Everything's going well in the schools. We have open houses that are happening. Mr. Mezzanotte and I and Mr. Murphy have been attending those open houses just to be able to share any information regarding the capital improvement projects and the new Whitford Middle School. Also, we started doing some training that some of the administrators, Mr. Mezzanotte, myself, and some teachers at the middle school and high school participated in last week. I know we've talked about doing instructional rounds, which is a model to go into classrooms to look at instruction, to do observations, provide feedback. So we are working with a few other districts on this, Narragansett, Exeter West Greenwich, and us. And we started the training last week.
Excuse me, is this a public meeting? We cannot hear you back here.
Okay, I'll speak louder.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we started the training last week with the other districts. We're focusing in on secondary math. Are you able to hear me now? Or I just want to make sure.
This way I can hear you.
Okay, I will. I'm talking to them and all, and hopefully the microphones are picking it up. So we started the training last week, and at that training we're focusing on secondary math. And so we had members of the math department from each middle school and the high school with us. We're looking at instructional strategies to put in place to support all students in the classroom. So we'll be continuing doing that, and I'll provide you some other information as we go regarding that. The second item on here is regarding the SRO training completion. We had talked about this last year, the end of the last school year, and Chief Urban had said that there was training that was coming up with our current SRO. And they completed that training in June. I say they because the police department sent 2 of their officers to it. This way, if our current SRO, Officer Menick, is out, we now have a second officer that is trained that can fill in for him. So Scott Klein also went for the training. So we just want to thank the police department and Officer Menick and Officer Klein for participating in that and the work that they do at our high school. So,
Thank you for the follow-up on that.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Any questions regarding the superintendent report? Okay, we'll move on to routine items. The first one is the executive session. So we're going to seal the executive minutes from today. And as I said earlier, disclose that there were no votes taken in executive session. Can I get a motion to seal?
So moved.
Second. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then for the consent agenda, does anyone want to exempt anything from the consent agenda before we approve it? Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then we'll move on to reports. So the first item is the special report. It's the personnel action. Does anyone have any questions regarding that? Or anything, Dr. Duva, that you want to? Okay, so we can move on from the special report. And then financial reports. Any questions regarding the check reconciliations or the bank reconciliations that were provided? Leslie or Dr. Duva, anything on that?
Do not have anything to add to that.
Okay, and again, thank you for providing those. And then we'll move on to advisory subcommittee reports, and we'll start with policy. Ms. Lima?
So the Policy Advisory Committee last met on September 16th. We discussed a new district policy for FERPA, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, and we revised our current Energy Conservation Act to include an energy management plan to be in compliance with RIDE Stage 2 requirements. Both of those policies are on our agenda for this evening. We also continue discussions on the need to review all bus and transportation-related policies in detail still, and there also still remain a list of other outstanding policies that we're working through. Our next meeting will be Monday, September 30th at 4:45 at the Central Administration Building.
Thank you. Any questions regarding that? Okay, DEI advisory again, Ms. Lima.
The DEI Advisory Committee last met on September 18th. Rob gave the committee an update on the equity position and on plans for equity-focused professional development in the district. We discussed meeting dates for the 2024-2025 school year and intend to continue with the current schedule. We reviewed progress from the past year and brainstormed potential goals and opportunities for the upcoming year. We finalized an equity vision statement for the district and voted unanimously to recommend adoption by the school committee. That's on our agenda for this evening. The next DEI meeting is scheduled for October 9th at 5:30.
Okay, thank you. And the temporary advisory committee on district discipline practices and policies. Mr. Cleese?
So the advisory committee has met a few times, or actually more than a few times. I know we have not reported regularly on our meetings. But
This is just your meeting one, and then you have the other one later.
Okay.
So
I'll
this is just like
do
quick
the
update on the meeting,
All
and
right.
then the other one's on later for your report out.
Okay. Yep. So the last meeting was September 16th of this year. We met and kind of regrouped after the summer break to kind of look at policies. The district did provide us with discipline data that had been provided during the equity audit. We took a brief conversation about it, kind of the direction we wanted to head in. So we have a couple of requests, I believe, that are at the end of tonight's agenda that came out of that meeting. You know, I wanted to applaud the students that are a part of this group. They are always willing to have very thoughtful discussions with their experience in the schools, and I appreciate them very much, as well as the other educators and parents that are in the room as well. So our next meeting will be in October. I think our meeting schedule we came up with was posted tonight, and that's kind of where we are.
Great, thank you. Any questions regarding that? Okay, and then, sorry, any questions for DEI? I don't think I asked for that one after Ms. Lehman was done. Just so you know, you are totally welcome to ask questions or ask inquiries, so feel free to jump in at any point, but also for your first meeting, you can just listen and watch too.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Okay, we'll move on to unfinished business. The first item is the CIP existing bond, future bond. Can I get a motion for discussion?
I'll make a motion to discuss.
Second.
Okay, and so we put this item on just to talk a little bit about information sharing now that our stage 2 application is in and we had the successful approval from the town council last evening. Just wanted to have the district administration talk a little bit about how we are going to get information out to the community. So Dr. Duba?
Yes. So we are beginning that. We created a flyer which we shared with all of you that we're passing out at the open houses. As I said, Mr. Mezzanotte, Mr. Murphy, and myself are attending the open houses. We have a short little video clip that we're using to show the designs, the exterior designs of the new Wickford Middle School, along with a informational flyer that goes through the capital projects, the cost, and what the funds are being allocated for, along with a QR code that can be used for members of our community to submit questions they may have, which leads to the next thing we're doing. We are creating an FAQ, a frequently asked questions document that we will put out there, that we will update every few weeks as new questions may come through. That is something that we will have. Over the next week, we will also put this out in an emailing and getting it on the website. So the first step, we were going to open houses. Then we're going to put everything on the website. We're going to put it on social media through our Facebook and send out emails with this information. Mr. Mollis and I have been meeting. We're going to schedule a public forum next month, and that way we'll do the same thing we did last year. We'll have some presentations, have time to receive questions from the public, and that will happen next month. So that's where we are right now with getting information out there for everyone regarding these projects.
Thank you. Questions from
Any other additional ideas would be welcome. Any other additional ideas would be welcome.
I had a question. I know we had done the walkthrough.
The tours.
Of the tours.
Yes.
Is that something that we might possibly be able to do at Wickford again?
We could do that.
Okay.
Yeah, we could put something together for that.
I think that might be helpful.
I would recommend actually maybe both middle schools. If we just looking at this flyer and how much work is noted for Davisville Middle School, that might be beneficial.
Yeah, just I think they were fairly well attended, and I think they might be more well attended this time. And then my other question was, so you said you talked to the town about the public forum. Has there been any conversation about, and this isn't our area, but like the tax impact and having that information?
I know they're working on that, so they are working on that. So we have that information to put out there.
Okay. Because I think that would be helpful as well.
And Ken, do you know if we will develop through the designer like any type of video, like a virtual flyover, virtual walkthrough?
So we don't have a virtual walkthrough of the interior yet, but we do have a short video, and I'll put that online as well, that shows the designs that are happening. And just this morning we talked, they're going to see if they have something to do a flyover as well.
Yeah, we had one faculty meeting dedicated to Tollgate and Waller, building 2 high schools, both a flyover video as well as a walkthrough after they showed us the schematic which, you know, makes sense. You can use your imagination and so forth. When you see it, actually, you're walking through the building and seeing the space. It's really neat to see, and it's worth 1,000 words or more.
One just other suggestion is, like, I know we had every single piece of information since the beginning of time out on the building tab. Maybe archiving some of that and just having like still available with a link off of it. But if we just had, you know, like the most pertinent information, it might make that page easier to navigate.
Well, and I think also I think that point's really very important, because you all have done such a phenomenal job putting up the information from all of the different things, but I think also making sure that people understand what the current project is. I've been hearing, like, people brought up Quinnesset the other day, like the middle school at Quinnesset, the combined, like, I think trying to dispel some of the past plans and really reinforcing the first one, that might help. So I do agree with Jen that it still should be up there, that all that back information should be somewhere, but maybe just...
We can move it to a separate page,
Yes.
so what you see is the current plan.
And like a link to that off of that, in case
Yeah.
anybody wants to go look up a specific piece of historical information.
Joshua, any ideas on how we can get the word out about the bond? No pressure.
I don't know. Have you done like a compare and contrast thing where you show what the old middle school looks like and then what the improvements are going to be next to each other?
We haven't, but that's a good idea.
That's a good idea, Joshua. You get to stay. No,
You're in his seat already.
good job. I think that's a great idea.
Nice job.
I'm not surprised, to be honest. Our students are so great. If you have any other ideas, especially for, younger residents, folks can vote at 18, so some of the high school students are voting in different things. If you have any suggestions on how we can get the information out to them, definitely feel free to share with us, because we want to make sure that they're well informed on what they're voting on as well. Any other thoughts or suggestions from the committee? I just, one thing for me, just a reminder of when early voting starts. I know everybody talks about November, but I believe early voting in town starts October 16th. The candidates all know, 16th. So making sure, anything that we are doing, obviously we can't do everything before then, but that, is a date where people can start casting that. And then, I think we've talked about everything else that I had on my list. Any other thoughts or suggestions? Great. Okay, so thank you so much for helping get the word out about that, and let us know how we can assist. Okay, moving on to item B. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to discuss.
Okay, can I get a second? This is the superintendent's recommendation for reorganization of central admin.
Second.
Thank you. Dr. Duva, you want to kick us off on that one?
Yes. So what you received for this meeting is an updated layout of the organization of the central office district administration for the school department. The very first page is a district level, and what I did was I broke it down by each department. That way visually it's easier to read. I know last meeting recommendations about where people report to, and did go back to my administrative team and discussed that with them of who reports to who. It's still the same. We felt strongly with who the directors are reporting to, who the supervisors are reporting to. So on this first page, you have district level. We do have we have NK citizens on there. We have school committee, then superintendent, and then off of the superintendent we have administrative assistant for superintendent, and then if the school committee clerk position is approved, that would be there as well. And then from there, under superintendent, you have assistant superintendent, you have your director of student services, you have your director of finance, your director of human resources, and your director of facilities and school safety. Your supervisor of child nutrition services reports to the director of finance. Your director of curriculum and supervisor of information technology reports to the assistant superintendent. And then you have your supervisor of transportation and director of athletics, which reports to the superintendent. The next page is the Department of Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning. So you can see the Assistant Superintendent, and then branching off is the Administrative Assistant, and then you have other directors or principals under that. I spent a lot of time with the boxes and the lines. They're not perfect, but I will explain that. So underneath your assistant superintendent, you have your director of curriculum. You also have a data manager, and you have your supervisor of information technology, so your IT department. Your principals report to your assistant superintendent, but just looking at this, it looks like your director of curriculum, principals, supervisor, IT are all at the same level, but your principals would be under your director of curriculum when you're looking at the level of hierarchy. And then from your principals, you have your school clerks that work through with your principals. Not every building has assistant principals and deans, so that's why that's off to the side. So you have your assistant principals and your deans, which are at high school. And then under them, you have your teachers, your teacher aides, and your student services support staff. In addition to this department, you also have the Office of Family Learning, which reports to the assistant superintendent. And you can also see on that right-hand side the Equity, Belonging, and Community Engagement Coordinator. That position will fall under the assistant superintendent and the human resources director, because there's different responsibilities that that coordinator will have, and your professional development part of it is going to be under your assistant superintendent. Next section is student services. So it's currently, that department is currently your pupil personnel services. We did have discussions with our director, and we prefer that department to be called student services. Just sounds better. So you have your director of student services. In that department, you have 2.5 senior clerks. Those are your clerks for that department. You then have your assistant director of student services, and then from there you have a special education coordinator and your early childhood supervisor. And under them are also the student services support staff. So they report, student services support staff report to the principals of the building, but also to your director of student services and assistant director. Next page is the athletics department. So we have our director of athletics. We have the new position that was put in this year for a senior clerk. It's a quarter of full-time. There's one full-time position. That position is split between departments. A quarter of that person's responsibility will be athletics. Then you have your assistant director of athletics and athletic trainer, and then your coaches. For our business department, we have our director of finance, and then under the director is your controller. We have our staff accountant, we have a payroll clerk, and we have 2 senior clerks that work in that office. And then also reporting to the director of finance is your supervisor of child nutrition. There's a part-time senior clerk for that department, and then you have your child nutrition staff. Those are the staff that are working in the schools. And that line should be going not from the controller, but it needs to move over, so it goes directly to the director of finance. Next department is Human Resources Department. So you have your Director of Human Resources. That department has an administrative assistant. And you have your Benefits Coordinator and your Equity, Belonging, and Community Engagement Coordinator. And then under that you have the HR Generalist. So for the Equity, Belonging, and Community Engagement Coordinator, the responsibilities that are focusing on staff development all fall under HR. Next page, you have facilities and school safety. So you have your director of facilities and school safety. You have 1 senior clerk. And then you have your maintenance staff. And then you have your ABM custodian. So that agency contract all falls under the director of facilities and school safety. Next department is transportation. You have your supervisor of transportation. There's 1.25 senior clerks. That quarter of that clerk is part of the full-time position that's between food services and athletics. And you have your bus drivers and your bus monitors and bus aides. Next, you have your child nutrition services. So you have your supervisor of child nutrition services, part-time senior clerk, and child nutrition staff. Information technology. You have your supervisor of information technology. And then you have an information technology tech support assistant. And you have a network manager, a system manager, a senior technician, and then 2 technicians. questions regarding that organizational chart.
Okay, thank you so much for walking us through that. Dr. Duba, questions from the committee?
I'll just reiterate my concerns from the last meeting. I'm concerned that there's too many people feeding directly into you, and that isn't going to leave you with the ability to concentrate on what you need to do. Because every time there's a problem, it's going to come to you. And so, I just think that having a role that some of these feed into would be helpful to provide some additional administrative support at the higher level.
I appreciate those concerns.
Other thoughts?
I will add that, from what I know of corporate organizational structure and what I've learned being in the corporate world and things like that, I do agree it looks like a little bit of a heavy lift. However, I also want to give you the leeway to direct the administration the way that you think needs to be. I would encourage you to kind of revisit this later at the end of the school year, give it a year, see how it goes, and keep it as an ongoing conversation with us. And if you see that you need more, if there comes a situation where you need more additional support, always feel free to come back to the committee, of course. But thank you for breaking this out the way it is, though. It makes it much more easily readable and things of that nature.
I think it's important to give it the year to see how this works.
I would agree.
To make sure that everything is running efficiently.
Right. No, I agree.
Before transportation was underneath the facilities and all of that
It was
stuff?
under the COO.
The COO. So is there a reason why that one hasn't moved underneath one of the other buckets? Because that one to me feels like it's a lot.
Mm-hmm. So with just kind of current situation from over the summer and just my experience from the previous district of doing transportation myself, it just kind of made sense for now for that to be there. Eventually that could move over. I think after a year I'd like to reflect on that and then shift that over under Director of Facilities.
According to this, there's really 7 people who are going to directly interact with you pretty much on a daily or whatever weekly basis when you have a meeting with them. And the goal is going to be that the people who are under the assistant superintendent go to him. Mm-hmm. And he handles all the issues and then kind of fills you in as to what's going on. So although schematically you're overseeing everything, yes you are. But you're not micromanaging all of this, let me put it that way. You're relying on the people who are in those key positions to be able to handle the majority of the day-to-day and really just get you involved if it's outside their purview or they need advice on something.
So
and they're going to update you at weekly meetings of this happened, this is what we did, and we took care of it. I mean, if it's a major issue, yes, you get involved right away.
Right, and that's the we have directors in these departments or a supervisor that they're skilled and able to do the job that they've been hired to do, the day-to-day job. I'd say in any department, and you see the same thing, when a problem arises, they want to go to someone to talk to have a thought partner, to be able to reflect on and strategize what needs to happen. Right. And that's, we're there for that. But other than that, the departments do run independently on their own.
Right. I mean, because if you look at this, it appears overwhelming. If you were to diagram this all out with you at the top, and eventually everything does flow to you, but in reality, it's not.
Okay. I think, I definitely respect what you're doing, Ken, and as I mentioned to you, I'm concerned about dissolving a administrative position. I think kind of how we had it structured before might not have been the right choice. I think you definitely need a specific skill set for a director of administration or a COO. But just thinking about some of the things that past role did, I do feel like there's a gap, with the current plan. And I'm also concerned about if people are out. So if the supervisor of transportation's out, in theory, you as their supervisor have to then take over those responsibilities day to day, and I just don't think that you have the bandwidth to do that. And so I would be much more comfortable if we had like a director of administration, maybe not at the level that the COO was at, just as that kind of middle interim. But I also want to give you the autonomy to try it out. But my recommendation would be to leave a position like that as vacant, and then as you kind of learn in your year 2 of what you might need, then assessing that or not. But I feel like it's like literally if Michelle is out, like you have to, like on paper, you have to go and do that job because there's no one else to cover that right now. Or if Dave is out, like you have to go to the games and like you know, like that's what this is saying structurally. And then also
I would say in reality, within we would delegate other people that are able to do that, not necessarily me stepping in and running the transportation department or being the athletic director. I think, you know, we would look at who we have as well as delegating certain responsibilities.
Yeah, I just think like from like thinking about all the RFPs, all of the things that like the director of facilities was channeling through the COO, all of the, if we do hopefully get the bond passed, all of the things that are going to go along with that, all of the kind of complexities of transportation, like we were talking about how, you know, that area is not staffed for how large of a fleet we have and all of the different things that we're trying to do with transportation. I hear you, but I'm just concerned about the directness of like what that means for you as like a direct supervisor. We know the director of athletics is there, which is an unusual one for a superintendent to have anyways, but we know why that's there. So I'm just concerned about dissolving it because the school committee right now might feel one way, but then if you, once an administrative position's gone, like it's gone and you're gonna have to, you know, really reset to get it back.
I think you're making a pretty valid point, Erin. I noticed, like, for example, when we haven't had a director of finance for a while, how much bandwidth that took from you, Ken. I would be concerned. I think maybe this is something you're the leader of the school system. I want to also see you do what you think is appropriate. It's your full-time job, your full-time profession and trade, more expertise than any one of us. I think the only thing here that probably alleviates some work for you and maybe a few headaches here and there, because we could be demanding, I guess, is the school committee external relations clerk. I hope we pass that. I think that could take something off your plate. But I do agree with if somebody who's like as essential as a director of finance were to vacate, and we have someone in an assistant capacity taking over as we have, that could be very taxing on you. So maybe it's just something that, you know, we see how kick the tires, see how it goes for a year, and then maybe revisit it sometime. Not we, but whoever's here.
Because you could reallocate resources in this fiscal year, and then during budget time, reassess that position. Like right now, you're going to have vacancy funds if you don't fill it, and that would give you until January, February-ish to make a final determination. But also, if you're locked to Jim's point, and this is what you want to do, like you've heard our concerns, and you know, we entrust you to run the district. So
yeah, I respect and appreciate all that, and I really appreciate how you're looking out for, you know, myself and the district. I really do. I'd like to give it a year and see how it goes. We are adding a position within the IT department because the COO was in charge of that department. So we do have a new position here, supervisor of information technology, that has been posted. We'll be interviewing on that soon, and that will put someone in charge of that department. But if we can give it a year, just see how this goes, I would appreciate that.
Ken, do you need approval on that?
Typically, this organizational chart is approved by a school committee.
Okay.
yeah, so we would need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve, then add to that motion that we revisit this in 1 year to see how it came out.
I'll second that.
I would just so just on that motion, just 1 year is 2 fiscal years, just as a reminder. So it's just something to think about. You know, like it would be mid-cycle, so it would be not for FY25 but FY26.
I think maybe revisit at budget time.
Ken, you talking an academic year? I assumed you were talking an academic year.
Well, I would say through this school year, and obviously it would have to be
Academic
something that we discussed, academic year, that, you know, around budget time, that would give us a few months to see how everything's going, and then we had to put a position in that would be part of the budget discussion.
All right, for clarification, academic
So
year is what the
academic
motion.
through the end of the 24-25 school
Thank you.
year.
I'm comfortable approving this as is today. I do think that there's some design aspects that need to be
Yeah,
fixed
that's what I
on
was
it.
saying.
Yeah, so like I get the gist, but I do think we need to
So there's
just
some
little
lines
things
that
like
need to be moved.
yeah, and then also like and we can give you some feedback on that, like just to make it really consistent and clear for the community. But I'm fine approving the concept and then knowing that the design update will happen later.
And along with the design, the title changes for people that don't match, like what's on their contract versus what's on the website and all that, just to make sure that's all tidied up in one.
Does that need to be a different, like that would be different agenda items in the future,
Right,
correct?
tonight you just approved the structure.
Yeah, we'd approve the structure and then in a future
So it's
agenda,
student
we could
services
add
that would
the
have
things
to-
that we need to
Yep,
change.
yep.
Yeah,
Alter
because
the
we're
name
actually
to
talking
that.
about changing a whole division's name,
Mhm.
which has impacts.
Correct.
Yeah, so.
This is an
we have to bring that
organizational
forward.
structure.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions or comments on this?
Yeah, I don't want there to be the confusion, somebody going, well, where's the people personnel, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, obviously, we can figure it
Yeah,
out,
that's a good
but
point.
I just think it
Yep.
should be clean.
Yeah, we'll definitely look at those areas and put that on in the future, but then also that might be something important to note on the design of like, especially for those bigger ones, like formally X, to let people know what's new positions, what were just changes in titles so
Yep.
people don't get confused. And then also I always think it's good to put a date on org charts, just so that people know what year, like it can get confusing and then people are pulling out org charts for 10 years ago, so.
That's a good
And
point.
can I make a suggestion that we put this on the website also, because you had to go digging into a budget from a few years ago to find the last one. I just think it's a document that should be accessible.
To you guys' credit, they did find it though,
Right.
so I
So-
appreciate the effort. Any further discussion on this one? Okay, hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you so much. And then Ken, you and I can look and see what we need to put on for updates based on the decisions that we make. Okay, next item is the addendum to the assistant athletic director / athletic trainer contract. Can I get a motion for that?
Make a motion to approve as presented and discuss it in executive session.
Second?
Okay, any discussion?
Sorry, that's
It's okay.
taking notes from the last one. So this item was on the agenda for a few reasons, and I'll just bullet those for everyone so there's a clear understanding of why this contract is up for change. So when the position was originally put in place, the assistant director of athletics and athletic trainer, that starting salary was not set at appropriate rate to be competitive to the position itself. We did just renew this contract last June at that time, and the amount that was set was lower. I should have came in higher, and I will take the responsibility of that, of bringing that in. But also over the summer, we have seen what other districts were paying or are paying their athletic trainer. And we want to make sure that this position is competitive. We have highly qualified person in that position right now. Athletic trainers are very hard to find across the state. We want to make sure that we're able to keep this position filled for the for what the needs are for our students in the athletic department. So the recommendation is there to increase the salary on this position to $79,000, exactly $79,360. That is $4,000 higher than the highest athletic trainer positions in the state, but I think it's important to note that this position is unique for North Kingstown, as it is not just an athletic trainer, but it's also the assistant athletic director with administrative duties. So when you look at a comparison of the other positions of athletic trainers that other districts have, responsibilities just as an athletic trainer, and also for 10 months. This position holds responsibility, administrative responsibilities of assistant athletic director and athletic trainer, and it's a 12-month position. So those are the reasons why I'm making the recommendation of this salary increase. I also want to note that in looking at this, we do know that there are other positions in the district as well that we need to be looking at regarding hourly rates and salaries for other staff that we will look at with upcoming budget discussions and contract negotiations that are coming up. We want to make sure that all our staff are being paid at a competitive rate, but also valuing them and who they are and supporting our students in our district.
Okay, any further discussion?
I just think that last part that Dr. Duca said is very important, so thank you for calling that out.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, motion carries, and we will amend that contract. Moving on to the next agenda item, recommendation for a school committee clerk. Can I get a motion?
Move passage.
A second.
Great. Conversation on this? I can do this one, Kim, to give you a second. So basically, did the most recent one get attached, or did it just get emailed?
It looked like it was the most recent one that was
Should
attached.
be.
Yeah.
We're going
Okay,
through
perfect. So attached to the agenda is the most recent job description. We kind of went through based on the one that we had previously and made some updates to align it with what we were currently doing. We did, Dr. Duva and I did discuss, it does report to the superintendent. This was a conversation Ken and I had. Employees don't report to the school committee, even though this employee will be servicing the school committee. I felt really strongly that employees should be all reporting to the superintendent, and so we did make that change, although we did call out kind of where the clerk would assist the superintendent in certain ways, and then also that they do directly report to the committee, but not in a supervisory way. So they work with us, but not in a official supervisory capacity. So just wanted to pull that out. We also changed some of the language just to work in supporting the advisory committee meetings as far as agenda preparation, etc. And this is a little bit different than the previous one with the communication piece, knowing that that's an important piece of getting information out to the community as well as responding to media inquiries, etc. So any questions or suggested edits to the position?
I'll just say I'm glad we're doing this. I think it's very necessary and can give great relief to our administrative assistants already who put in a long day and then stay later. They get elected to this duty. I know they had to fill it in, but a very vital position. I'm glad we're doing it this way. I thank everybody who was involved and good suggestions, Madam Chair. I think also, thank you.
Okay. Other comments or thoughts? Dr. Duva, can you just remind us again where the funding for this position is coming from?
Yes. Somewhere.
A lot of color coders.
Yeah, no, so the funding for this position is going to come out of the vacancy funds that we currently have regarding the COO. So we are recommending that it's a part-time position, 25 hours a week, $25 an hour. So it would be from, I had October, but once it's posted through June, so this academic school year under this current budget, it would be a total of $22,500 for that. And then if this position's going to be capped, it'll go into our budget cycle for next year.
Is it going to be advertised as a temporary position or as a permanent position?
That's up to the committee. We can advertise it just as 1 year, temporary for now.
I'd rather see permanent.
Yeah, I know
You're
that
not gonna get
all
many
your
people
positions
for
technically are.
And we only got you for one academic year, or whatever.
Yeah, like that to me just, like if I was thinking of applying and I heard you say, yeah, so we'll reevaluate in June, I might be like, yeah, I'm not so sure about that.
I'm just saying, like, right now, as far as the budgetarily coming out of this budget this year, that's what the impact
I'm comfortable posting it because the vacancy funds that we're talking about aren't just one-time vacancy funds. So it's not like we had these vacancy funds because we had a position vacant for 4 months and that never will happen again. We're talking about reallocating funds that are in the existing budget, and so I would not recommend posting it as a 1-year funding contingent position because that's not what it is in theory. Like obviously every year we have to look at the budget and there's possibilities of positions being cut or changed, but I feel like this would have some job stability for folks as there's a great need. And as I had mentioned earlier, I always thought that it was a lot of work for the assistant superintendent clerk and superintendent's clerks to take on. And I was, but as I've gone through the past 2 years, that has also really shown itself, but also that they will be working really closely with those folks because there's so much complexity in preparing the agendas. It's not just posting agendas, it's getting all of the backup material from all the folks. So huge thanks to Joni and Jules for the work that they've done, but also their continued support of this role because they're definitely going to have to collaborate and work together to put together the attachments for the agendas.
So we'll put it as a 12-month position then.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the expectation is that it'll be like
Part-time 12 months, right?
Yeah, right, yeah.
And then Dr. Rubin and I did talk about concerns about like hours, especially with advisory meetings, and kind of how we would handle that as far as minutes, and other staff, perhaps depending on the area, like would assist with attending those meetings and taking minutes, because there's weeks that we have 3 or 4 advisory committee meetings going on at once, plus a school committee meeting, agenda prep, like that's beyond a part-time amount of hours, and so I think we have to be realistic about how we utilize staff and how the whole team kind of works to support the different meetings and whatnot. So just something to I was doing the math, and like the math doesn't math as far as hours, so we just need to think about that. This isn't going to solve everything. Like we're still going to need some additional support,
particularly for the subcommittees.
Yeah, and again, like it's the agendas, making them, the taking minutes for it, making sure things are posted, and we of course record, but like it's also, there's a risk with that of relying just on the recordings for minutes, etc. So just thinking through that piece, that was a part that I didn't think could be completely fulfilled in this part-time role. Cool. Anything else on this one? Okay, so we have a motion to approve. Hearing no further discussion on call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Joni, you're welcome to come though, like whenever you want.
You got nothing else to do tonight on any other night.
No, sincere thanks to you, Joni,
Thank
for all of that, the work. We really, really appreciate you. Okay, moving on. And Jules. I know, I'm just staring at Joni.
Yes.
If Jules knows too. Although she does watch from home, so hi, Jules. Okay, policies. Ms. Lima, you want to introduce these?
Yep, so I will make a motion to discuss KDB2, which is the FERPA policy.
Second.
So this is the first read of a new policy which outlines the rights under the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act for parents and guardians of students who are 18 years of age or older with respect to the students' education records. The language for the policy comes from the federal model policy, and we will see this policy one more time before voting on it.
Yeah, I was reading it, just pro forma basically.
Yeah, it's literally from a template that they provided.
It's from a template, but the policy advisory committee did have some, what's the word I'm looking for? There's spots where you have some choices that you can make throughout the document, so it's not exact
Verbiage.
Yeah, but we worked through kind of what we thought was best for the district, what we were currently doing.
Yeah, I was going to say it's formalizing what we've been doing.
Yeah.
So,
but pretty, to your point, Jim, pretty standard.
All right, thank you.
And then with this, there's also notification that will go out from the district that is required by law, and so once that goes along with this piece of it, once we approve it at our next read. Any further questions on that one?
okay. I'll make a motion to discuss ECF, which is the Energy Management, Conservation, and Sustainability Policy.
Second.
This is the first read of a revision to an existing policy. As part of the RIDE, Necessity of School Construction process, we need to show that we have a plan for efficient energy operations. So pretty much our existing policy was updated to include the language that's required as part of the Stage 2 application. we'll see this policy one more time before voting on it as well.
Ken, is that just related to the new structure proposed, or is that across district?
I think it's across the district. Yeah.
Across district. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions regarding that one? And again, we'll see that one for approval at the next meeting.
I'm going to jump down one and make a motion to approve EEA1 transportation contractor selection.
Okay. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
This is the second read of an existing policy, which was revised to include a requirement to participate in annual training on safety protocols and school policies for our contractors and our bus drivers. We may see this policy again with additional revisions because all of the transportation-related policies are still being reviewed at the policy advisory level, but at this time I'm recommending approval for these changes that you see before you now.
I just have one question. On point number 7, any transportation contractor who is approved by the school committee for an additional bus must assure the school committee that they shall personally drive one of the 2 buses?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of 8.
Did you have a question about that?
No, I just didn't understand why.
So, like, our contractors own their buses, but you can get permission to own a second one. So basically what the policy says is if you own 2, you need to make sure that you're driving one of them.
Before you
You're
contract.
not subbing out
Yeah.
like 2 buses or something.
Okay,
I think that it's an interesting sentence.
okay.
Thank you for the clarification, John. Any other questions regarding this one? Again, we may see it in the future, but it's part of our commitment to trying to improve our safety protocols for buses via policy.
And just, Ken, this training has already taken place for this year or will be scheduled to take place on?
The training for the bus drivers, it already happened, but she also will be scheduled except throughout the year.
Okay.
But the first training has already happened.
But the one that's the minimum of an annual
Yes.
training has already taken place, and that's for contractors and our own employees,
Mhm.
correct?
That's correct.
The only thing on this one, Jen, maybe it's for a future look through, is just like thinking about like who verifies attendance and like where those records are kept, because I do think it's important to not only keep a record of who attended a training, but what they received at that training. So having some sort of archival process for that would be important. So that could be I'm happy to approve it today, but that's just maybe something to think about for future things, just based on.
I mean, that is kept by our supervisor of transportation, so she is keeping a record of who's attending and what training happened, the topics.
I think based on conversations, I'd like to see that formalized in this
Mhm.
policy, specifically how it relates to the actual keeping of the records.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's a good redundancy if that's the case.
Yeah.
Given what's going on.
Okay, I'll note that for when we see it at the next one.
Any further discussion on this one? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oops, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to discuss BE.
You can make a motion to approve and then you can amend it once you're in it if you want.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to approve BE school committee meetings.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is the second read of an existing policy which was amended in April to increase the amount of time for citizens' comments to 5 minutes, but it was only updated in one section. So this revision updates that time limit in all parts of the policies. So last night we received a request from a citizen to consider 2 additional items for this policy. One would be to add language that would allow community members to remove an agenda item from the consent agenda, similar to how the town council does it. And 2, that we add language to the policy to provide a process for requests for amendments to minutes of the meeting. Then we heard from another citizen tonight with another few suggestions that I think are deserving of consideration. So we can do 2 things. We can approve the policy as is and send the whole policy back to the policy advisory committee. We can discuss the requested amendments here and make an amendment on the fly and approve the amendment here. My one comment is on the minute discussion. there's, I think, a bigger conversation to be had around the minutes, because we used to provide much more information, then we swung the other way when we had a question raised about what we were documenting in the minutes. So I personally think that we should be providing more than we do, but I think it requires a discussion. So that's a hash out conversation, and I'm not sure that's for here.
My recommendation, I think all of the comments that we got from citizens are very valid, but I would like us to be thoughtful about how we write them and how we put them in.
Yep.
Like, I think if it was like one little tweak,
Right.
like I'd be comfortable doing it here, but I do think that having 3 or 4 very valid comments, I would approve it tonight and then send it back, and we could try to prioritize it, knowing that it's not like the heaviest edits,
Right.
but I do think, even with the consent agenda one, I don't disagree with that, but I also want to work through with Andrew, like, what the benefit of that would be, because we provide public comment, and, you know, like, I was trying to think through, why does the town council do it, why do we not, and what the pros and cons of it would be.
Yep.
So I just think it warrants some further conversation with Rob, Ken, and the policy.
Yeah, I
advisory
agree. Like,
committee.
I think all the suggestions
Yeah.
are good and we should consider them, but I think it requires a discussion specifically on that policy. And since one of the other suggestions was to end on time, I'm not sure that we can do that here.
I'll let the cat out of the bag. That was actually a policy proposal that I'm going to put forward.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so
Good
we'll,
preview.
so it sounds like the committee's in agreement that we have the approval on the table for the current one with just updating those 2 spots that we had missed. Point of clarification, Andrew, in theory, could we have just updated those as like they were oversights? Is that little changes like that where we forgot to make a typo change, you would like us to bring them back?
Yeah, even if
Bring
it's
it
just
back.
as a
Yeah,
formality.
that's fine,
right,
that's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
I think technically Robert's rules, you could do it, but we can always, it's fine. Okay, so we will,
So we'll approve the
Approve and then-
policy as
and
it
then
was
we can go
submitted,
back.
as revised tonight, with just making those 2 changes to 5 minutes across the policy, and then we'll send the policy back to the policy advisory committee to discuss the other points that have been raised.
okay, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And then moving on to new business, the next item is district goals and initiatives. So we received a draft of district goals from Dr. Duba, or a list of goals from Dr. Duba. And so we will turn it over to you, Ken, to kind of, you don't have to walk us through like every line to the citizens' point of finishing early. But if there's anything very big that you want to, like, because some of these we've seen before when we approved the strategic plan that was going to the state and different things. So if there's anything specific you want to call out or anything you want to address that's not in here intentionally, but we definitely all can read the document too.
I'll just kind of go through each one very briefly, right? So a lot of this is going directly back to our district strategic plan. The first one is on academic achievement, so that's looking at increasing our performance across the district with all of our students. So you see that we have goals for all students in RICAS, PSATs and SATs for math and ELA. We have closing gaps in here for students with disabilities and our MOL students. The next section is on the vision of the graduate work that we're doing. I just want to point out some of these have data points as a goal. Others are just a goal as something we're doing that we want to work on and finish to completion. So you see on the division of the graduate, it's our goal by the end of this school year to have that vision established, including identification of core essential skills for students. Next one's on student attendance. Very important that we continue working on that. You can see that we made very good progress this past year with an 3% improvement from last year to this year. We're still looking at that 2 to 3% improvement in attendance and lowering that chronic absenteeism rate. Fourth one's on equitable education and working environment. So I'm just going to kind of focus on that because it is a little different than what's in our district strategic plan, but I know that is a priority here. It's providing professional learning opportunities that promotes an understanding, appreciation, and acceptance of all individuals who attend and work at the North Kingstown School Department and including the greater community. In those 3 areas, working on creating a positive learning environment that embraces diversity and individual differences, promoting equity of education opportunity and culturally responsive practices to support each student's academic success and well-being, and ensuring all people feel valued, respected, included, safe, and have a strong sense of belonging. Next section is on investing in our staff, students, and community relationships. So that goes back to our survey works data that we yet every year, and it's, I'm really proud of the progress we made from last year to this year, and we discussed that at a recent school committee meeting. I mean, we've seen 5% increases in most of those areas, which is really important. So we want to focus on that for this school year, maximizing that support and capacity for all of our staff and students and families, to work towards another 5 to 10% increase. And continue to build an interconnected network of productive working relationships, and focus on school climate, building leadership, professional learning in those areas. Also want to focus on our communication plan. Refine and implement a district-wide communication plan for internal and external communications for the district. And then to also ensure the safety and well-being of all students and staff by implementing consistent and effective safety protocols, planning of crisis preparedness activities, continuing our partnership with our local law enforcement and our emergency response teams, and engaging all staff in safe emergency training. The last goal is on finance and facilities. To ensure our financial resources and facilities are aligned to and support the educational program goals we want for our students. Budgets are aligned to what is needed for resources and supporting those programs, and facilities and finance support those instructional programs that we have in place and maximize options and opportunities that we have for our students. And then lastly, working on a comprehensive vision for our school facilities and upgrades that align with our vision for our student learning. And I have in here, by the end of this school year, making sure that our school department has a facility maintenance plan in place. And it's really important that we have that. We need to know what that cycle is for maintaining our schools. So putting a plan for in place to protect and maintain our future capital improvement plans.
Thank you so much for walking us through that. Comments from the committee?
So I have a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for putting this together. For the academic achievement, it references the NGSA, but there isn't a goal listed for the NGSA in here. There is one in the district strategic plan, though.
I need to add that in there.
Okay, thank you. You also, this does not include the graduation rate, which was also listed in the strategic plan. I just didn't know if that was an oversight or if you were not including that as a goal.
I just kind of looked through some of those. We can put that in there if that's something you want us to kind of, it's going to be worked on, right? Because that's part of our strategic plan. I just wasn't looking at having
well, I think
a laundry list of goals, knowing that here are some things, we're focusing on, but we also have within our district plan we have to work on as well. Like, this doesn't include all of the goals within that district plan, but we are working on those.
My concern with this particular one, and it ties into another question that I have, is that the goal that's in the strategic plan should specifically relates to our economically disadvantaged students. And so I feel like not having this in the,
sorry,
that's okay. Like, I not having this be a part of the called out goal to me feels like that goal is not, that's the only one that wasn't brought in. So if they're all in there, I'd like to see that one in there too, because I think that's an important thing to focus on.
well, and I think with that, sorry, I was going to speak about thinking about what's achievable this year. So like, kids are going to graduate in June, so like it has to be measurable for this, like what we're going to do this year to either try to impact this year's class or what we're going to do this year to try to impact future classes.
I mean, in theory, it should already be in process because it's part of the district goal, right? So it's not like we're creating a brand new goal.
So it's calling out what we're doing right now, though.
Yeah.
Because that one's longer. Like, it's not just, like...
Well,
so
no,
it's
it
like
says in the 2024-25, there is an actual statistic in there for this upcoming school year to put in there and quantify.
Never mind, Jen's right. I was trying. Yep.
So the vision of the graduate, I noticed that the goal that was put in for this year was actually last year's goal. So are we, and this may be off topic, but are we behind, or was that just?
No, we're not behind. So
Okay.
so the it says here, by the end of the school year 24-25, North Kingstown was establish a vision of the graduate, including identification of core essential skills for all students. So so we are, that was a goal we identified.
For last year, it said that was a 2023-2024 goal on the strategic plan.
In the strategic plan.
Yes.
So one thing to note from last year is that the VOG work didn't start until like almost halfway through the year because we took some time to get the RFP.
So that's
approved
what
and
I'm
things like
asking. Like,
that. Yeah, so we did have to
yeah.
push that back a little bit.
Yeah.
I do anticipate, we have our first meeting coming up in a couple of weeks. I do anticipate that those core essential skills will be identified by middle of the year this year.
Okay.
Yeah, we're behind, but for good reason.
No. That's,
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
wanted, because it does not match, so I just wanted to specifically
Yeah,
make
yeah, like
sure that.
we're gonna catch up quite quickly. In fact, last year.
No one would like to finish it more than Rob, so.
Yep. Well, last year, I think part of the work we did last year is going to help us go faster this year because of the amount of data that we collected.
Okay. I'm gonna circle back to the number 4. For number 5, you have the goals and numbers, to improve by on survey work, but there's no reference number. So it just would be helpful to know, like you're saying, 5% gain in school climate. Like, what is the benchmark number that you're referring to there?
Yeah, we can add. I'll add in what the current percentage rates are right now.
I noticed that there was nothing listed about the stage 2 process and goals around that. There were some of those, again, in the district plan, but they're not called out here, just making sure that we're
So
not.
if you look at the district plan, what was in there reflects on the previous
prior
projects,
one.
right?
Yep.
So that's why I kind of made this a little more general and focusing on facility maintenance plans. And I mean, of course, that's going to be one of our priorities, but I was trying to keep it a little more generalized here, not knowing what's going to happen over the next 2 months.
Okay.
I think we could add in a goal though, saying like, if this, but worded better than this, but like if the bond passes, a goal for January to June is to accomplish this part of that planning process, right? Because there's a next step after that. So once the funding source is approved, like what do we need to do in that time frame of January to June, and putting that as a goal to accomplish? Like, I don't think that's a bad thing. And then but we would do an if statement. Like if it doesn't pass, then we of course are going to do what you were saying regardless. But I don't think it's bad in anticipation, knowing to put it in as a tentative goal.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Like to pull something out, just to name it as something. Going back to the academic gaps, this was something that we have talked about closing academic gaps by subgroup. I've brought it up each time and stated the fact that because it's not actually articulated anywhere as a specific goal, that it's been hard to get like movement on it, even though I know you all are working on it. But again, I don't see it named here, and I think we had talked about the fact that we weren't going to revise the district plan to include it, but I feel like this is a place where that should be named.
You can put that in there.
Okay. I've got one more, but circling back to equity, number 4, I feel like this should tie to the equity vision statement that ultimately ends up passing, because that equity vision statement is going to be like a roadmap for the district, and it should match kind of some of the goals that are here. But this is not, to me specifically, I understand what you're saying, we're striving for equitable education and working on it culturally responsive, but it's not specifically naming equity as a goal. Like, we're not saying that we're committing to developing policies, practices, and procedures to eliminate like the systemic disparities that exist in our district. And I think, belongingness and inclusiveness is wonderful, but at the end of the day, it comes down to inequities. And I would like to see equity specifically named like it has been in past years.
I had a different comment on that one, and this was a comment, Ken, on a couple, and you did a really great job quantifying a lot of the different lines, but particularly for that one, like as you said, some are percentage metrics, some are like, did we accomplish this? Yes, no, right? Like, did we do vision of graduate? Yes, no. For that section, and then one later, it got like a little too big. Like, so I feel like if we could make them like a little bit more of SMART goals for some of those, they might feel more achievable. Like creating a positive learning environment that embraces diversity and individual differences is such a good macro goal, but like, I feel like we need to go, a lot of the other ones were one step down from that, and so just thinking about what that will actually, what our goal this year is to trying to accomplish that bigger goal might be something to just think about, so that we can feel like we're making progress in a pretty big concept.
So I'm going to be completely honest and transparent on this one. I knew you'd have a lot of feedback, so I'll be honest.
This is
wrote
your-
it,
I'm gonna wait
and
to
I
see
was
what
like,
they tell
I'm not going
me.
to spend hours on this.
I mean, it's
because
not the point.
gonna
It's a
take-
nice
so-
collaborative approach, Ken. So you're okay with not approving this evening if we kind of go
It's
over
totally
through
up
it? Yeah.
to you. These are the goals going forward that you have to approve. So I'm being.
Yeah, no,
I
that's-
knew
that's
that was
valid
going to
because
have a
it
lot of
should be.
feedback. So I was like, I'm not going to spend hours on this because.
Well, I do think it should be a collaborative conversation too, so I'm glad that you took that approach because, like, the school, like, it should be something that we kind of work through together in trying to figure out how to align it with what we've already said for our budget. Because that's the other part about this is the timing is so weird of when the district does it because we're mid fiscal year, but like we're beginning of school year kind of like the timing just in general is interesting because we might be establishing goals that we don't have the budgetary finances aligned with. No, like, but it's the process. Like, I get why it happens, and the school year and the fiscal year don't align, and so, and the budget process most certainly doesn't align based on when we need to do it for the state and the town. So, it's an interesting activity.
If I may add this something too, because and Ken and I can work on this as well. We've talked about this a few times at these meetings and other meetings that we've had about how a lot of this work is somewhat dynamic, meaning it comes about sometimes unexpectedly in terms of what the focus is and so on and so forth. So I think a lot of this is just a very fluid process. Like I can think of things right now that I'm not going to delve into specifically, but that Ken and I can certainly sit with, and we can definitely drill down a little more specifically with some of the goals in this area. Okay.
Other thoughts from?
I just had two.
Oh gosh.
Sorry.
Okay.
I think, especially considering what's on here next, there should be something in here about redistricting and like a vision for the district and like a plan, because I don't want to find us in September having the same conversations that we've had for the past 2 Septembers. So I think that needs to be part of it. And then lastly, I feel like there should be something in here about special education and a review on that and some attention focused on that, doing some type of review in that area. Like we've had some
Anything
changes.
specific or like what?
I don't have anything specific to like say, but I looked back on a couple things, and a couple things I've talked about, like reviewing special ed and like, looking at different things. And so I just feel like that's an area that we have not addressed here.
It's hard to formulate policy as on the fly as we're doing it here. Is there any way a lot of this work oftentimes the legislative bodies is done in committee, here, subcommittee. Is there any way maybe it could be directed to one of our subcommittee, make policy or something like that? Along those lines, then bring it forward?
Yeah, I was going to.
It seems formative.
I was going to bring up, because I see you mentioned student with disabilities and things like that, but has any of this been run through CLAC? Because we heard from them last week that part of their responsibilities is to make policy suggestions and changes, and they've never done it. And so I would encourage you to reach out to them and have some of these conversations with them and get more feedback about other special ed areas to include in here, because as a parent of a special ed student myself, it's very important that we make sure that is front and center in helping, making sure that all of our students are helped. And so I would encourage more involvement with the heads of CLAC and to get their specific suggestions. And I think that might be the subcommittee and the policy that we need suggestions from them to hear, because that's the source, the parents of these students.
I would just recommend very pointed agenda items, exactly what you're looking at, so that it can be done as efficiently, but obviously as constructively as possible.
Well, and like for example, if that one, and I do think we need to take a look at the scope of what we're putting forward. I would like to fix every single thing in this district right this second, but like it's not.
I think when you think of goals, right?
We have to
and I said
prioritize.
this before, every time we add some, it's like we've got to prioritize.
Yep.
And typically, looking at goals, 3 to 5 goals is what we typically
this is
see.
too many.
We've now going on to like 9.
Yeah. So to your point,
it's all really important. I think that's the big of it. Like, what are we going to focus our work on this year? I'm not saying I don't want to do anything around any of that, but we want to make sure that it's also doable.
So the last time that we actually officially did a goal thing like this was in, I think, October of 2021, right? And so there were 8 or 9 things that were identified with sub buckets underneath it, and some of them had been carried over, but those were for the 2021-2022 school year, so clearly they are quite out of date, but,
They're only out of date if they're
and
done.
I think, that's what made me think of it, it actually listed on here was special education.
Yeah.
And so I thought, we never did that, right?
Yeah.
And so.
Well, we've definitely made
Well, I mean,
improvements
not
in
that we've
area,
never
but
looked
we
at it,
haven't
but like
strategically written it. We haven't
yes.
updated that goal.
Yes.
Is how I would not say. I would say we've actually made a lot of strides in improving our practices with the over the past 5
Yeah.
years.
Oh, yeah, for sure, but just to specifically address that.
Oh, yeah. So I think to Jim's point, I don't think that there's a specific process, but maybe that's something we could think about in the future, kind of who helps develop this. I know there's been retreats in the past and different things, but as far as moving us forward for this year, because I think it is important for us to have some goals to be able to, like for the school committee to know what our focus is, for the district to know what our focus is, for the administration to know what our priorities are. I think for next step, maybe, Ken, if you and Rob want to take a look at it, and then I'm happy to give you, like, to work through a second look, and then we can bring it back.
For the future, I think when we write our district strategic plan, right, those are the goals. Now we're talking about other goals outside of that, and that's okay. But I think all that needs to be part of the
100%.
process of when we go to
Yep.
update
Yep.
our
Oh,
district
yeah.
strategic goal for
Yep.
district strategic plan for next year. That's in there because that really should be what we're following.
Yeah, for me, that process is interesting because a strategic plan is like a long. It's supposed to me is like 5.
Well, it is.
10,
And then
yeah.
each year you have what it is.
Yeah, and then you
what
you're
what
doing.
you.
Yeah. So
But every year we have to relook at that and update it.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we can look at this. Maybe try to tighten up some things, quantify some things. Rob and Ken can look at it. I'm happy to look at it with you, Ken, and then we can bring it back to the committee with your feedback. We're there. Jen got to share lots of feedback. Did other committee members have any thoughts on things that they wanted to bring up? I know, Rob, you mentioned the special ed. Debbie, Jim, anything that you wanted to add about the goals that you were hoping were in there or curious why they weren't in there?
No, thank you.
We'll make sure you get to look at it, and then you can give Dr. Duba some feedback. Okay, so no action needed today. We'll do some follow-up, and then we'll try to lock those at a future meeting. Next item on the agenda, can we get a motion to discuss?
So moved. Second.
So to Jen's point, when we were making the agenda, Dr. Duba and I, we kind of know that one of the things that we need to talk about in this district is districting of the students. With the 5 elementary schools and the 2 middle schools, just making sure that we're utilizing our facilities and, making sure that our districting lines make sense for where our student populations are currently. And then in talking about that, we're talking about the overlap of transportation in that conversation when you're thinking about moving students around, the transportation implications. Our elementary schools have different start times right now. Our high school start time is also concerning, and so we put this very light combo agenda item on of kind of having a beginning conversation of a comprehensive review of redistricting, transportation, and school start times, and so on. And Ken, anything to add to the preface of the title?
Well, I think it's important that we have this conversation here because we do need to move it forward and put together a committee to look at this. We have to put a redistricting plan in place for the next school year. We can't continue operating the way we have and in the summer trying to figure out what are we doing with students when the buildings are full. We have overcrowded. Hamilton is overcrowded. Fishing Cove is overcrowded. Forest Park is closely. Stony, there was some space. Quinnesset is underutilized. And we really need to look at that and look at what will that redistricting look like of moving some of those neighborhoods on the southern end north into those other schools and really look at how we are using Quinnesset and how that, I think structurally we need to look at that, what neighborhoods are feeding into that
I
school.
think also what's important is we need to look at some of these start times. That has come to me from some of the parents that there's concerns with like the high school starting at 7:15 and students having to be at bus stops at 6:30 and the cold, the rain, the snow. And from a medical standpoint, kids in ages of middle school and high school, they actually have hormonal changes that go on in their bodies, not just the testosterone and estrogen, but also the melatonin levels. Their brains don't start working until about 8 o'clock in the morning. That's why they can stay up until 2 o'clock. And there's actually a nationwide movement. Less than 10% of middle schools and high schools across the United States start before 8:30 in the morning. And when I looked at some of the times too, like Fishing Cove starts at 8:45 and they end at 3. Yet Stony Lane starts at 9:25 and ends at 3:42. I mean, not 3:43, not 3:45, but 3:42.
Like, that's just when the bell rings to start dismissal.
Right.
You know, so that.
But the hours are so skewed. Now, Davisville Academy starts at 7:15, and that's appropriate because many students who have learning disabilities actually do better in the morning time than they do in the late afternoon. The high schoolers are not being benefited by a 7:15 start. And all of the elementary schools, well, 3 of them start at the same time and the other 2 start at different times. That's very confusing. The elementary schools, if we're going to have anybody start early, the kids are awake in the morning. I mean, anybody who has children knows they're up by 7:30 in the morning. As they age, they sleep in, they don't want to get up. So the times that we're sending kids to school really make no sense either. And I think that needs to be looked at.
So it sounds like Debbie is very excited to join whatever committee you
I
have.
think that committee.
No, I think your points are very valid.
Chairwoman right there.
Ken, as far
Chairwoman
I have all the
material.
medical
Yeah, right.
research here. If
No,
anything
that's
else
why
to
that's
look
why you're
at.
being nominated.
Well, we're not doing that. So, Ken, as far as next steps for this, is there an you know how it doesn't throw me to add additional groups and things. What's your thought on the approach to this?
We need to put a group together.
Okay.
We need to put a group together of staff
Yeah.
and
Kind of similar to how we
families
did
and
the.
students.
Yeah.
And get that started.
So what I would recommend is doing what we did similarly to the temporary advisory committee for the long name one, and putting together kind of that like sheet of kind of the scope, what the goals are, who might be involved, and then presenting that to the school committee at our next meeting so that we can kind of start getting that in motion. Because obviously that's something, we have some long-term things we want to talk about, but also some really short-term things that we need to make sure we address, because I do want to echo the comment from the citizen, like redistricting is a big deal for families and students. We need to be really thoughtful about the timeline and also about like the communication and making sure they understand the plan and the process and are engaged in that conversation. And so that would be my recommendation, is kind of creating that same kind of one sheet that we did last time, and then we can approve that at the next meeting, and then move forward in following the policy to get folks on that committee.
Are some of those members prescribed by RIDE? Is there, because there's a process that RIDE requires to go through for redistricting, correct?
Yeah, I don't believe that there is. I mean,
A requirement of so many people.
I remember sitting on it myself years ago when I was a teacher here, and we were looking at going from K-5 schools to K-3 and 4-5. And splitting it, and it was a very large group because you're trying to get representation from the different schools and different bodies, but there was no set. I mean, I would imagine it's gonna we're gonna have
it's a good point though, Rob. Just
good
making sure that we're
representation
following
throughout the district.
I'm going to go on record now and say don't do that again.
What was that?
The K through 2 and the 3
No,
through 5.
I'm not
Just
recommending that. I'm
putting
just
it out.
recommending
I just want to put
keeping
that out
K-5
there.
but shifting.
I never did K2, did you?
Oh,
Was it while
I
was
had
away?
all 3 kids in 3 different schools at one time. It was
Listen,
not
Rob
fun.
has 3 kids in 3 different schools. No, I definitely think, thoughtful approach. Will be
The other
good.
thing too that
Right.
I'd like to discuss with all of this is the transportation. Because when Mr. Waterman was here and I asked him specifically and directly, why is our high school starting at 7:15? I was told because of Rhode Island state law, where anybody who lives in North Kingstown, we have to provide them transportation to the school of their choice. So we honor the private schools to get their school started on time, and the way the transportation works out is our kids suffer and go earlier. And I think that's horrendous. to be honest with you. I would say that, you know, we meet our school and our students' needs first. And then if we need to transport to a Catholic school or whatever, it's at whatever time is available for our transportation to get you there. We're punishing our high school students to make it more convenient for a Catholic school or whatever private school, a charter school, to be able to start on time. So, I mean, this whole thing is going to be very complicated because we have to look at what the schools can handle, what's physically and mentally in the best interest regarding start times, but are we also going to be able to get the transportation to meet those needs?
Yeah, we're also thinking of start times, right? So if we're going to change start times, what we're looking today, it's going to impact transportation. We'll probably need more buses, right?
Right.
So when you think about that, you know,
Yeah, the budgetary impacts.
We'll need an increase within our fleet in order to have
or a better
different
utilization
layers
of our current
start
fleet.
times that we have.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, or better utilization, like we talked about, like tracking how many students are on each buses and all of that sort of stuff. I know Michelle said that was one of her goals. But Debbie, I think your point is good, is figuring out what is the problem and like kind of what are, you know, like what are districting problems, what are the transportation problems, what is leading to our school start times being the way that they are, and then figuring out, to Ken's point, like what are the possible solutions to getting that. And again, this is not a small lift one. These are ones that we've been talking about for years. But I do think that they're connected, and I think having the same group look at them is important, because to do one, it has a trickle effect on the others, and so that's why I put them. Ken and I talked about putting them together because
interconnected.
Yeah, but also I have no expectations that a committee will be able to come back and solve this problem in one school year. Like that's not very likely. Like it will be creating a plan, creating, you know, different things that will allow us to get to our goals of utilizing our transportation and our facilities in a really good way for students. So, all right, so we'll come back with that, and if anybody has additional thoughts, feel free to forward them to Ken.
Well, I'd like to volunteer to be on that committee because I have a lot of research already done.
Cool. We will talk about that next year.
Yeah,
You're going to be on it.
You got it. You got it.
As well. Okay, moving on. Has everybody any further discussion on that one? Great. Next one is recommendation for DEI Advisory Committee. Can I get a motion for that?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Ken, do you want to? This one's secondly coming from here, or Rob, whomever.
So we are recommending that the following individuals be appointed to the DEI subcommittee. It's Mrs. Susan Curley, who is a school psychologist at Vanessa Elementary, and Heather Nibala, sorry if I'm pronouncing that last name wrong, who is a parent from Fishing Cove Elementary School. And then there are a group of individuals who are no longer serving on the DEI subcommittee. We have 3 students, one from the high school, 2 from the middle school, Davisville Middle School. We also have a parent and then another student who graduated from high school. And then the following individuals who are currently on the committee will remain on the committee: Jen Lima, Erin Earl, Robert Mezzanotti, and Chevali Finkelstein. David Aubin, Jane Stokes, Mary LaPresti, May Laus, student, Kelia Shermer, another student, and Jacqueline Laura.
If I may just add one thing really quick. I just want to acknowledge and thank the students who are no longer on the committee for their participation in the committee. I know some of them had to step down because of scheduling conflicts and whatnot. And then we have one student who graduated who is off at college, and I want to just thank them. And I also want to thank Melissa Campbell-Kelsey for her the time that she put in on the committee. She was a very valuable member, and we're thankful for her contributions.
And then anything to add, Ms. Newman?
So just, you know, we had specifically staggered the membership on this committee so that the whole committee wouldn't turn over at once. We opened up applications back in February for the first time since the committee had been created in 2021, and now per the school committee policy, we opened it up again this past month as part of the annual process. So we've got a solid group that consists of 11 members plus the 2 co-chairs and the additional school committee member. So I feel like we're in good shape.
And just for clarification, we went through the same process that we do as far as like posting and following the policy on how to get an application process?
Yep.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the DEI Advisory Committee members as presented by Dr. Duba? Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next agenda item. Can I get a motion for item D under new business?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Lima, as the chair of the advisory committee, do you want to explain this one?
Sure. So one of the priority recommendations from the equity audit was to set a clear vision and common language for equity across the school district. One part of that included creating a equity vision statement, which would define and communicate how our existing vision, mission statement, and strategic goals all relate to equity. It was noted to make sure that this statement explicitly included a vision focusing on equity for all marginalized classes and encourage that we engage stakeholders, especially students, in the drafting process. So over the past year, we have done that, and I'll let Rob talk more about the actual process, but what we're presenting tonight is the final version approved by the DEI Advisory Committee, which is recommending approval by the school committee tonight.
Great, thank you. Mr. Mezzanotte, anything you want to add?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank the DEI Advisory Committee for their efforts to make this happen. This statement is a result of many hours of work. Our group reached out to North Kingstown students, families, and staff, and we received an extensive amount of feedback, and we had great collaborative conversations during our meetings. The vision statement encompasses the task we have as educators to ensure that all students are able to thrive in our schools, that they are welcome members of our learning community, and that they feel empowered and prepared to make an impact in their future years. The asterisk section of the statement offers a description of what the DEI committee has defined as all. Our administrative staff expressed some concern that even though this description is relevant, it is also incomplete. And for this reason, we want to make sure that express our concern that the identifying specific characteristics that we mean by all, we want to make sure that this may unintentionally make the statement less inclusive, and that we share these concerns with the committee, and they heard them and they considered them. And I just wanted to make sure that that was shared with you all.
Great, thank you. Some other things that I just wanted to add, huge kudos to Rob and the administration team for how many times they took a look at this. This was, not even joking, version 20 probably of different iterations. It's a really hard task to write something like this, but I also really thought that the committee did a nice job in trying to make sure that they called out like the action behind the vision statement, because a vision statement is only as strong as what the district does with it. And so I really appreciated the part where it talked about like actionable ways that the district could try to reach this vision of having equity, which was, developing policies, creating practices, having partnerships that address those inequalities and can really encourage empathy and kindness. So I think that is really good, and I know the committee was talking about ways to showcase that work to the community, and so making sure that the statement's not just performative but actually actionable within the district.
Exactly. And this was a lot of work, and I really appreciated the feedback that we got from the students, like anonymously. Like that was really powerful to go through those statements and see the responses to that, and that really helped form, I think, a lot of what we tried to do here. So, once this is approved, the advisory committee will be working on the rest of that priority recommendation under the, creating an equity vision statement, which will include publicizing the vision, creating a communication plan around the vision, and then drafting an equity policy to be reviewed by the policy advisory committee. And those will be some of the next steps that we'll take at the advisory committee level.
Great. Further questions or comments? One other thing to note, we did try to make sure that it was accessible to the majority of students in the district, so even having younger students look at it and trying to really find something that could be accessible for a lot of our learners in the district. All right, hearing no other comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the district equity vision statement, please say aye.
Aye.
Debbie? Great, perfect. Okay, thank you so much. And then thank you to the advisory committee for their hard work on that, and Mr. Mezzanotte from the administrative end working that through, and all the feedback. Moving on to the next agenda item. Can I get a motion for this one? It's not a motion to approve.
To discuss, that's what I was going to say.
We're not approving it no matter what, because we don't want to, this is a FYI moment. Okay, motion discussed. Do we have a second?
Second.
Great. Joni, you can pick which one you'd like. They were pretty tied, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so one of our goals, and I really appreciate Dr. Duva and the team working on this, is to establish all of the advisory committee dates at the beginning of the school year so that folks know when they are coming up, and also trying to not, to think about the calendar as a whole, obviously consider holidays, but also consider, you know, how many meetings we have in a week and not double booking them because we want to make sure that citizens that want to go to the public meetings can attend them. And so this is the beginning of that attempt. And so any questions or comments, I guess, for the meeting dates as presented today? And then Dr. Du, if you don't mind just addressing why the only the other advisory committee, the budget and finance, is not on here. I know that that was a question that I had, but also was raised by a citizen. So.
Just to note the concern over the time of the start date for the building advisory.
Are you going over them, or do you want me to jump in about the budget plans?
One more thing. I just want to, so each committee, I just want to clarify, each committee chair is responsible for scheduling the meeting. So I want to thank each individual chair for going through and getting these dates set up with the committees for the year.
No, I do not want to go through each date and each time.
Okay. Well, I just wasn't sure
yeah.
going through. So as far as the budget and finance committee, we attempted to get meetings scheduled. The time did not work for everyone, so we've put that back out there. Jules sent it out this morning to the entire committee, so we're trying to work this out. There are some conflicts with the members on the committee of when people are available. There's because of work schedules, because of childcare, so we are doing the best we can to get that set.
Okay, so that sounds like soon coming,
It's
or
being
worked on.
We're trying to accommodate everyone's schedules.
Yeah, and I think that is a super noble cause, especially for a new committee.
I don't know, maybe I can ask, like, if we have quorum,
yeah, you need just get quorum.
You know what I mean? We've got
Not every. I think the biggest thing is at meetings like this, especially when we're trying to actively engage parents that have children in the district, community members that have areas of expertise. Like, we're just not going to have 100% member attendance, and so I think trying to find a date that you have quorum at base, or like a little bit above quorum. So if you have 10 members, if you like 7, say most of the time they can come. Like, it's okay to pick a date that we just don't have 100%, and that doesn't mean that those committee members can't contribute by reviewing the material, giving the chairs feedback in advance, etc. But I just think it's not possible for in-person meetings to be able to get to 100% of meeting attendees, unfortunately, every meeting. And that's why quorum exists.
You know, the question, because with this committee, the subcommittee, budget and finance, because it's so staff heavy, as to when to set even the time. Personally, I'm used to committee meetings at night. That's my other job, used to be out of night meetings, 6, 7, 8, whenever they would end. And then, but here, to try to keep it, I guess, within the time scope or frame of work schedule is I guess it was a concern, for them.
It was there was a concern with child care, and then others have work schedule. So it's just, we're trying to balance this out, and it's.
Yeah, I think to the point of the timing, I think making sure that I totally know that it's hard to be at work all day and then have meetings at night, but I do think because we're a public body and the public needs to be able to access our meetings, like, we have to somewhat consider that in thinking about not everybody's work schedule is a 9 to 5, but some do, and especially with the school schedules, I think that's a really important point of, like, not having a meeting while school is still in session, or when people might be getting their children off the buses, etc. And so, I would like us to look at possibly pushing those two a little bit later to try to give more access to the public that might want to attend.
And Aaron, I also expect that we'll be bringing, I would present, of course, whatever findings we have or the result of a meeting. But the director of finance probably will be playing a bigger role in terms of explaining some budgetary issues, or something that I got to admit that math isn't my strong suit. That they probably be bringing that back to this committee. So in that sense, it certainly would be aired publicly.
That the advisory committee has to be public too, though.
Oh no, I'm saying not. I'm saying it will reinforce
It'll come
what
up
was
twice,
spoken
yeah.
about. Exactly.
Yeah,
The
if you
redundancy.
can't, and we do record them.
Yeah.
Like, there's lots of ways to access it, but I also think, especially because when we have comments and things, like, you can't access that piece. It's just something to think about and see what we can do. So, noted. So, would you mind, so it sounds like we'll get the budget and finance, and then were there any other concerns other than the building advisory time? That we wanted folks to look at? Holidays were all accounted for?
Holidays are all accounted for.
Yep.
CLEC had a conflict, it was changed.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, so I think it's just those two, and then obviously just making sure that these get on the website and up to date, and maybe we could even send something out to make sure people are notified about them. I need to, like, since we do have a calendar set. And then obviously these are all, I would put a note on all of these PDFs, I'm not sure if they're all in there, that they are subject to change. Sometimes we do have weather issues or something happens where we can't have quorum, and in that case you cannot meet, and so I think just making some sort of note that, like, it is subject to change, and that we'll make our best effort to get that information out as quickly as possible if that does need to happen.
I would suggest, if possible, linking to a live doc with the dates versus a
Yeah.
PDF. That way they can be updated. Like with meeting dates change, they can just be updated right away. Because
Yeah.
if somebody goes and finds a PDF.
It makes me nervous, yeah.
Just reminding you of your time.
I am well aware, but we only have one thing left, so if
Okay,
you just
okay.
finish it, then we all can go home.
Set a record.
We did have one earlier than this. Okay, so anything else on the things? The advisory meeting times? Great, and just wanted to thank all the members. There's a lot of employees, obviously administrators, and members of the public and students that are on these, and I think that they are really helpful for us in making decisions, because they can really get into the weeds on topics. So thank you for everyone who gives their time to be on those advisory committees, and folks who have applied and expressed interest. So, all right, moving on to the next one. I know I need to go.
Do you want me to just do it?
Just do it. Just do it.
Can do it by-
This one's important, so if we can just get through it, I can. 3 minutes
Okay,
is
let
not
me
gonna.
motion to discuss.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion to discuss item F, and we will. Mr. Case, do you want to just explain the two ones, because we probably would need two different motions, or depending on kind of where we land. So.
Sure. So the temporary advisory committee on district discipline, which you will see abbreviated as TAC, and abbreviations. We've had some really great meetings, especially with students. Students are willing to give their personal experiences and the experience of their peers in regards to discipline in the high school and the middle school and those areas. And then the staff, from a administrative and a practical application of discipline, they're willing to give their experiences as well. So it's been some really, I think, great conversations, very fruitful conversations to get started. And getting the discipline data from the equity audit from the administration, so thank you for getting that to us over the summer, or at the very end of the summer. We kind of wanted to do some like tangible things that we could do now, things that we could at least start now, because none of us are, I think all of us on the committee, we realize it's a longer process to come up with a policy, to come up with a plan, to come up with recommendations, and then even longer to implement that in the district. It takes time and it takes change, and we understand that. But some things that the committee felt strongly about at our last meeting was to kind of get an update and have the administration do an update of that same data that we got from the equity audit, but to apply it to last year. And have the administration do a synopsis for it. So we're not actually looking at the data. We're not looking at, who,
No identifiable.
Yeah, no identifiable data of what occurred, but using the same parameters that were set up in the equity, how it was divided into sub-buckets and that type of thing, but apply it to last year so we can really get more fresh data to see what's going on. Has it changed? Has it not? So we would like to request for the committee to do, or the administration to do that. And also, at our very first meeting, one of the things we did is we went out on the internet and looked at each of the schools' web pages to see, did their handbooks talk about discipline? How did they talk about discipline and things of that nature? And one of the things we noticed was, the elementary schools have a pretty much standardized kind of handbook in a lot of ways, and how they approach discipline and how they talk about it. Obviously, the high school being one school, it's pretty, there. But with the middle schools, there seemed to be a difference in just the language, how it was talked about, how it was presented. One definitely seemed a little more severe than the other one in how it was approached. And so the committee also made a unanimous vote to ask the administration to review the middle school handbooks and how they directly discuss and talk about discipline and the approaches that they use. And also, the committee further suggested to use Davisville Academy's handbook, because the way that they approach discipline in that handbook was really kind of touted by most of the members that they were impressed with it and how well it was put together and how well it was very clear, it was concise, and it was very important communication used in that. So we would like to ask the administration if they would just kind of start looking at those two middle school handbooks to see if we can have more of a standardized format and just updating the language of how discipline is discussed and talked about.
Can I ask if the committee had identified any sort of timeline on this? This is important work, and I 100% agree with looking into it, but just from a standpoint of just...
We did not identify a specific timeline, okay. But we thought, this would just be something that would be obviously more readily available than some of the other recommendations we're going to be doing.
From my understanding from Mr. Case, I think, obviously that they make recommendations to the school committee, and the school committee could help with setting timeline. But one of the things I think that seemed to be a sticking point was perhaps prioritizing the discipline data, being able to have that, because I think they were trying to, from what I understood, one, to make sure they're accurate in the problem that they're solving, and so having more up-to-date information on that would perhaps prioritize that. And then for the handbooks, I think that's important, but also that would be something that you'd want to really work with the building administrators and maybe, in my opinion, roll out for the next school year, like a mid-school year, unless there's something that you all determine is like a high need. So in my mind, the discipline data,
that's more immediate.
In the next month.
I've already had a conversation with the superintendent about it. He
Perfect.
reached out and said, when are you thinking you might need this data? And we said if we can have it by the next meeting in October, that would be great. But, we're willing to work with the administration, obviously.
I think as far as updating the handbooks, that's something we'll work on, but that will get looked out next school year.
Yeah. Oh, so that would be the goal of implementing that for the next school year.
And the data will do it best. I understand more now with how you explain how you want that data done. It's not us just kind of getting it and giving it to you. You want us to actually analyze it and give you a summary of that data. So that might take a little bit more time depending when your next meeting is, but we'll start working on that.
Two comments. If it's faster just to give the data without, if you pull all the identifying information out, it's faster just to give the data, that's fine too. We can work on summarizing it ourselves. The other thing is if the committee decided that they wanted to review the handbook specifically to see if there was an eye to something specific, would you be amenable to a specific recommendation around a piece of it being brought back if there was something that could make a tangible impact for the balance of this year?
Can you say that again?
She basically said, you want me to translate it?
Could you revise
She
it
basically
before
said, if the committee has a specific concern about one of those, would you be willing to look at it to implement perhaps sooner than next school year? Did I get that correct?
In the handbook?
Yeah.
I think it depends on the time.
Yeah,
right?
so my recommendation,
we're saying we're going to make changes mid-year. I really would recommend, it depends what it is.
Yep.
Right?
I would recommend
and
that the chairs, which one is the administrator, if there's an immediate concern, bring that to Dr. Duva's attention. Because there's something that they're particularly concerned about, we should get that right to Dr. Duva via the administrator that's on that committee.
Yep.
Or the other chair.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's it.
So I don't believe we need action taken from the committee today unless we want to officially accept the recommendations from the advisory committee.
I would put a timeline on put a timeline on both of them.
Okay, so someone can make a motion if they would like.
I'll make a recommendation that we accept the recommendation. I make a motion that we accept the recommendation from the temporary advisory committee on district discipline for one, to have the updated synopsis, have updated discipline data from the administration by the next meeting that they're scheduled to have, which is October 21st, and that they conduct a review of the handbook specifically with an eye towards discipline prior to the start of the next school year.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? I
Is
just,
it October 21st?
That's the next meeting.
I would just add the addendum of any immediate concern should be brought to the
Yes.
superintendent.
Right.
I don't think that needs to be in
Yeah.
the motion, but I would like to
Yeah.
reiterate that under the motion.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I don't think that there was, I think it was more the feeling of like wanting to be able to feel like there was something tangible being accomplished.
Yep. And just an equitable approach to discipline from both middle schools, because some of the members, definitely saw a difference in how they approached it. It was just, so I guess surprising in a lot of ways of how they discuss and
It
kind of
definitely
meted
stands
out at
out.
this point. Yeah.
And I do want to commend Davisville Academy for their overall handbook. It's
Yep.
very well done, very grounded in positive practices in general.
Great, kudos to them. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then lastly, correspondence.
September 15th, Alana Swanson, organizational chart missing in policy CCA and CCR. September, that's what I meant. September 16th, Karen Martone, questions related to the September 12th school committee meeting. September 16th, Pam Panero, Perkins Eastman presentation. And September